talk a little bit about that movie, but we're gonna wrap that movie and what it's about in what's going on out there and what choices do you have, what opportunities do you have to just be active. So we're going to talk about that. So let's talk. We're going to talk about the matches, and I'm not talking about the ones with the sulfur on the tip, then you strike it and the flame pops out. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a musical group that at one time was known as the Locals back in the 90s. That would be Sean and Justin and Matt. And there's one other guy. Sean, Justin, Matt. Oh, I'll think of it in a minute. Boy, Chelsea's going to be mad at me for that. But welcome, everybody. This is 360 Performance every Friday, 11 o'clock here on KUHS Denver. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about sports at the end of the show, but as I move along, take a look at this. This is the quote. This is the mindful moment, mindset moment this week, and it's Brad Pitt's wonderful profile at a great old age of in excess of 50 years old. Can you believe that? I can't. I'm still feeling like I'm 40 or 30 or 20, and some days I'm 12. But that's not for me to be worried about. Only those who are around me have to worry about that. But here's the quote. We are so complex. We're mysteries to ourselves. We're difficult to each other, and then storytelling reminds us we're all the same. That is such an appropriate quote for today, coming from Brad Pitt. That's on a mindset moment. Every Monday we post our quotes for the week, and that was this week's quote. And it's relevant because there are so many things pulling and pushing at us. And much of it is not about what we consider historically as comfortable, or as some people call it, normal. For example, going to the movies is looking back in time, and we're actually creating drive-in theater again. There's even drive-in restaurants now. I stretch a bit. You go to Starbucks, and there are people sitting on the curb, both literally and in their cars, I mean literally sitting on the curb, or in their cars, eating their muffin, or their croissant, or their sandwich, or their cheese and fruit platter that they buy out of the cabinet at Starbucks. We're looking back in the past to be creative for the future. These are performance challenges. It also is telling us, as the winter months come upon us, to stay active. Stay prepared to be ready to do almost anything. So as I say that, it's my lead-in to our session for today, and that is a great film that I saw, which is Bleeding Audio, and it's an awesome film that I want to take you down the road of, and Bleeding Audio is the name of the film. It was produced and directed by, and I'm going to guess in some regards written as well, because I mean it wasn't really scripted. It's not a narrative. It's truly a documentary. But I'm getting to know this producer director, Chelsea. I interviewed her earlier this week. You're going to see some video of that interview in just a moment. But let me just tell you, it's an award-winning film during a season of film festivals that are challenged. They're not putting butts in seats in their theaters. They have to be creative and use smart settings and virtual showings of films and documentaries. The Denver Film Festival is going on this week, all this week, and will continue through the weekend and into next week. It ends on November the 8th, but they are one of many. The California Film Festival, that you can see the 3 band members of the matches are right there, and they won a DocuFest, one of many that they're going to win in the future, and I'm passing out good vibes for the Denver Film Festival viewers and voters, that they've seen the film Bleeding Audio, and they're going to be voting in an affirmative way for the categories that this film is sitting in. Now, as I say that, I want you to know this about the film. Now, there are traditional things about telling a story from a filmmaker's point of view, as a documentarian in this particular category. And Chelsea, she did a fantastic job of bringing this story to us. And here's what I mean by fantastic. You've got images that you capture live as a filmmaker of the characters that are in the film. Now she's got 4 amazing characters, amazing musicians who caught the bug early in life as musicians, singers, songwriters, and performers. And they were having their experiences influenced by all of the traditional things that musicians in the rock world come across. Managers that didn't quite get everything done in a timely fashion that cost them money, but they didn't know any better because they weren't a manager. They expected the manager to manage. They had huge crowd success, traveling all over the world, but making very, very little money because they didn't know about the business. They didn't know about what managers are supposed to do. Chelsea captured that through the film that she collected from the archives. Now that's interesting because that's a patchwork of product. It's like putting a quilt together and making sure that you're a really good seamstress to make the edges align really well and the shapes are carved out and fit geometrically and appropriately in their spacing on the quilt. Well, she did that with the help of a great editor. We're going to talk to her about that as well, but let's talk to her a little bit about how she got the bandmates to agree to doing this, because she still had to convince them. And she was a fan before the concept of the documentary even came up. So here's Chelsea Christer with me on an interview earlier this week.
Let me get to my first question and be more formal now, because I could talk to you for hours, I think, about just the whole experience. But when did you start planning the Matches documentary and then let them know that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, so in early 2014, I offered to help them promote their reunion by filming little marketing videos, right? And we, the plan was to do like, where are they now, kind of VH1 style, since it had been 5 years since the band had, seen the light of day. And then the other idea was to just kind of do a retrospective of, how their record came together and, just like these little tiny 3 to 5 minute videos. And as I was interviewing them and learning more about just the intricacies of their story and how their career had developed over, the course of a decade, but also seeing how some of those milestones.
Let me get to my first.
And we. The plan was to do like, where are they now, kind of VH1 style, since it had been 5 years since the band had, seen the light of day. And then the other idea was to just kind of do a retrospective of, how their record came together and, just like these little tiny 3 to 5 minute videos. And as I was interviewing them and learning more about just the intricacies of their story and how their career had developed over, the course of a decade, but also seeing how some of those milestones paired pretty clearly with the shifts in the digital industry, I started to, see that there was something bigger to tell. And then that first show sold out in seconds, and I went, okay, cool. This is a story. This is something that's, that's going to be important to tell. And then every subsequent show sold out, and it became a sold-out North American tour. And I just knew that there was something here that that was bigger than what any of us thought. And basically I sat down, I went away, I wrote a treatment, I wrote how I saw this story being told, and I had like this conference call with the guys saying, this is what I want to do. I would like to get your permission. Maybe I'll do it anyway, but I would rather have your permission so I can have access. And it took again convincing these humble guys that they could sustain a film, but ultimately I got access and permission, and off it went.
Note to self: don't touch the computer. Thank you for your indulgence. That was Chelsea Christer in our interview earlier this week. And let me point out to you that, first of all, Chelsea is a Coloradan. She's from Loveland, Colorado. Mountain View High School graduate. she is just genuine as genuine can be. And for some in that business of film and media, being genuine is a quality to be taken advantage of. But she has done a really great job of surviving and has good judgment in guiding herself through the labyrinth of decision making in business. And as she spoke to you, she struck a chord with the bandmates and knew them as a fan and their music beforehand. But when she said that the concerts, that the reunion concerts were sold out, and that when they went from one to another, and they continued to be sold out, it wasn't just like days of waiting for ticket sales. It was like minutes in some cases. The first one sold out in less than 30 minutes. In fact, the bandmates were trying to get tickets for themselves, and they were told online, none available, and they thought something was broken. That's something you can that is captured in the film as well. But just giving you that idea of how the energy that she felt as a documentarian was very validating for moving forward. So now she moves forward and she gets the plan, if you will, and Chelsea's very meticulous as far as putting out a storyboard to guide her through the process of creating the film. And she started seeing the pieces and started saying, oh, I need film about this and I need film about that. Basically going through a historical archive, if there is one even available. This would be like moms, dads, friends, uncles, aunts, anybody that was around them as they, in those formative years, the Wonder Bread season, right? To get some film. And fortunately for her, many of the bandmates were already very visually creative. They were artists, they were not just musicians, but visual people that would take film, take pictures, or had friends that would do that as well. So there was becoming a plethora of material to fill in the storyboard scenes for her. One of the things that intrigued me a lot about Chelsea and her effort as a film director, which is apropos for the film festival, the Denver Film Festival, or any festival she goes to, and I believe she's going to be going to a lot more. In fact, by now she may have actually heard from a couple more, all of which will be virtual, regretfully, to some of us. I'm a little bit torn about virtual versus not virtual. Listen, I've told a lot of people I love to be butts in seats, but from a performance standpoint, the work stands on its own. You could go and Google Chelsea Christer and get a line on the Bleeding Audio movie. It's not widely circulated yet, or buy a ticket to the Denver Film Festival and see it there. But you'll recognize when you do see it, the quality of the work stands on its own merits, regardless of pandemic. It's well done. So within the process of putting a film together, in addition to the director's effort in kind of organizing the big picture, see what I did there? On the big screen, she also needs to have people in her corner that are going to support take all this material, this many megabytes, terabytes of data on film, and connect it like a quilt. Every piece of film that she got was another swatch to go onto the quilt and to make this wonderful story come to life. That doesn't happen quickly. And then when you think about color and sound, to be blended and edited properly so that it flows and it doesn't seem like you're chopping down this road of the back roads of wherever the back roads you know about are, and the holes in the road and the gravel and the dust. And, you don't want that. You want a smooth asphalt trip, right? And you can see the road signs ahead of you and there's no surprises. You don't always get that. But in this case, she has connections from when she was a high school student with a friend of hers, Luke Schock. I call him the Schockmeister. And he's the editor, one of two editors, but eventually he was the editor after an initial editor took the plan and started to put it together, had to leave from the project, but Luke came in and took over. And here's what Chelsea says was valuable about that transition?
Talk to me a little bit about the Shockmeister. I've given him a new name.
You call him the Shockmeister. I love it.
Look, I've been around editors that are very silent, if they get into the family sound and all stuff, but he threw some flair to this that only you and others may appreciate, but I want to make sure my audience understands the relevancy and importance to editing the documentary in particular, because the flow is huge. So talk to me a little bit about his effort.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about, we actually had 2 editors on the film. And so the first editor I had on the film, her name is Jen Bradwell, and she essentially gave us the, I call it the marble. You know, she gave us our key storylines and arcs. And granted, I mean, I note carded out this film ahead of time, and I, had a treatment, I had a timeline. I gave it all to Jen, and I was like, here's 12 terabytes of footage and some papers. Figure it out, and she was amazing. She, gave us this incredible 2.5-hour assembly. But Jen ended up working on another project, and I, ran out of money. And I mean, Luke and I have been friends for 17 years now, which is just like crazy to say out loud. But he and I both lived in San Francisco at the time. He's since moved to Seattle, jerk. He abandoned me. No, it's fine. He's way better there. But basically, I just turned to him and said, I need to finish this film. Like, can you help me out? And originally he was just going to cut a trailer together, and somehow I convinced him to edit the whole movie. And he took Jen's basically assembly and helped me hone it down into this like lean 90-minute piece. And I mean, documentary storytelling is intense. I mean, you're essentially, the way that I described it is it's like writing a story, but you're only allowed to use quotes that have already been said, and you can't change them. Is that you literally have to just take what's there and construct something out of it, and there's it's kind of a weird reverse engineered way of screenwriting almost. And even though I went into the interviews very decided about the questions I was going to ask and the key points that I was going to expand on a bit deeper, I mean, there's so much on the cutting room floor, and a lot of it was just that post-production process of trying to figure out what the most essential storyline moments to preserve were, to keep it compelling and keep it moving, but also, just what, how do we play some of these beats, because documentary filmmaking, it's truth-telling, but it's a narrative telling of truth, right? So you do kind of have to take a few like narrative liberties in order to keep the thing moving and moving things around. Maybe timelines are a little off, but I mean, honestly, collaborating with Jen was incredible because she has so much experience doing feature-length documentary film, and she just like forged our path in post. And then working with Luke was amazing because he and I've come to realize worked together on pretty much every one of my films, and he and I have just such an offhand since we've known each other for over half our lives now, and he's also, God, he's such a good montage editor. He's got such an eye for movement and framing and how to take 2 different clips and put them together. Like some of the live footage at the end of the film, like I just don't even know how he pieced some of that stuff together.
Well, you will once you see the film, because it is glaringly evident, even to the untrained eye, how well the Shockmeister put it together and took Jen, the first editor's lead, and the organization, and she downplays it. She's uber humble, Chelsea is. She has more of a plan when she handed off to Jen than just 12 terabytes of data and some paper. That whole collaboration and connection between the 3 of them work very nicely, and to transition that well when she loses a key component like Jen, you know, and it's typical with films, especially documentarians. You run out of money at a certain point. You put it on the shelf and you go find more money, and then you bring it off the shelf and continue the process. So when you have people like Luke Schock continuing with the process and knowing you well enough, the teamwork, I have found in my work with teams, primarily with sports teams, when I kind of branch off into other types of teams. In this case, it's the media industry or entertainment industry, and looking at teams there. On the surface, they look a little superficial and kind of loosey-goosey, but the elements are there. When you know when you see the quality that comes out of the end result, you have to know there had to be a team that was well connected to create that. And in this case, it's not just the matches on the screen playing their music that's the team, because that vision is a product of the documentarian and the director, Chelsea Christer. So, cutting room floor, there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. In fact, I challenged Chelsea after we had some technology breakdowns with the internet. I talked to her by phone that very afternoon on Monday about that material. In some cases, people call that B-roll. It's stuff we can use later. We'll put it in the library. We'll see what happens. It's not literally, as the name originated from, film cellulose material on the floor that we're going to sweep up and throw away. It's literally now in the digital world, it's stuff we can put together as our cutting room floor B-rolls material and maybe do something else. Maybe create an episodic adventure of the matches now going forward, and the highlights of careers that have emerged out of those 4 bandmates and what they're doing. 2 of them are still full-time pursuing their musical careers as musicians and as songwriters. 2 others, one is kind of sort of maybe available if need be, but is more interested in his illustrating and graphic arts and artistic endeavors in the media world. And the 4th one, totally gone another way. Matt, he went and became an attorney. Interestingly enough, there's still a connection because he's an entertainment lawyer. So that's kind of the vignette of the matches to set up, I hope, to wet your lips a little bit about, hey, wrapping yourself around going to see Bleeding Audio, edited or directed and produced by Chelsea Christer. Now, this is my segue into the next image I want to put up on the screen for you, and that's about drive-in theaters. And I mentioned it a minute ago that lots of things are changing in our world, and to be able to get out and be active and to continue to know ourselves. We're a mystery, as the quote as Brad Pitt captured in the quote for this week on the Mindset Moment. It's truly interesting what's going on in our world and how resilient we are, and looking at and regretting that some aren't as resilient as we are or our colleagues are. But things like a creative approach to entertaining people, drive-in theaters. Walmart has made a pitch across the country with their store parking lots to create an opportunity for you and your families, or maybe just you, to come and see and be entertained. Now, I'm going to guess you're going to probably have availability, go in and get some treats at Walmart, maybe even shop before the show starts. Interesting approach, wouldn't you say? But that's my point. The creativity that we need to have right now to get things kind of going and staying on top of what's happening in our world. It's not, boy, it's a really interesting scenario we find ourselves in these days. Now, I'm messing around on my computer here because I want to bring up an article. As you know, I keep in touch with Pete Blackburn, and Pete is a writer, sports writer for CBS, and he does a column called CBS Sports HQ. And today he writes about, this is a strange thought, but I love it, so I'm going to share it with you. He said, I can't be there, and Halloween's not going to be the same for me. You're not going to be able to see me on screen, so imagine this. Imagine I'm in my NASA astronaut onesie suit with my really flimsy plastic helmet, and and I'm trick-or-treating. That's about as good as it's going to get for this year's Halloween for me. So says Pete Blackburn. Well, that being said, we have to resolve ourselves to the reality that Halloween basically been canceled, been cut off the network show. Now, I don't think that's true for everybody around the country. Just like being creative with the drive-in theater, I think we can be creative with Halloween. And some of that creativity is necessary to keep your kids safe, keep you safe, because typically moms and dads, they hang out with the kids as an excuse to collect their own candy. Even though they may not actually be in costume, they're close enough in the car or on the sidewalk away from the front door to, pick off a couple of the top sweet candies on the top. Now, this morning I decided to look into what are the top sweet things of Halloween candies. I'm sure you're thinking about what number one is, and if you're not, it's just because you don't like peanut butter. Yeah, you're right. It's Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. That's the number one candy for Halloween trick-or-treaters. Now on the list, I'm not going in any particular order other than to tell you that the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup is the number one candy for Halloween. There are others that are some of my favorites. Now they listed the top 20. So I'll tell you that Whoopers, the malted milk balls, which some people in my family love, I do not. You're not going to see me picking those out of the trick-or-treat bag. They're number 11 on the hit parade. You also have, standbys, the little teeny bite-sized Tootsie Rolls. That's down in like number 12, maybe 13. It's down there, but it's still there. And then some of my favorites are Butterfingers, the bite-sized Snicker bars. One that isn't quite high enough, in my opinion, is Almond Joys. The coconut and the almond on top. Oh my gosh, those are just very, very tempting for me. But didn't make it as high on the list as others. So we've got to be creative, and drive-in theaters is a way to do that. Look for those in your neighborhood. Suggest them. Have your own drive-in theater. Maybe it's a walk-in theater where people stand in your driveway and you put a screen up on the garage door and you do something like that. But be creative so that we can get through this health emergency without damaging each other, both emotionally and or physically. I hope that's not the case. Now, as I say that, I want to bring up a couple things here for you. My significant other, I have to share this story. She was at a grocery store, which will be nameless, and she's standing in line waiting to check out her groceries. And as she described it, two young men in camouflage gear and cowboy hats walked by the end of the checkout rows. You've got that alleyway. It's at the end of the checkout with all the ice machines and return your movie machines there. They walked through there. We're shouting about a political party and that you should vote and go, go, go. And but it wasn't so much what they said as much as it was the connection of what they said to how and what they looked like. They were definitely dressed in very frontier look. The cowboy hat was the starter, but then camouflage vest, khaki pants, boots with pant legs tucked into them. It was just a very aggressive, strong display of alliance and allegiance to a political party. And I am all for showing your pride, your confidence, and your allegiance to a team. For goodness sakes, I deal with teams every single day, in sharing with them technique and strategy and how to be a better team. Being a better team does not include intimidation or aggressive posturing to project your message and your image. In fact, I tell teams when they see that from an opposing challenger, that's when you should just puff up your chest, get a big smile on your face, and say, that's not happening with us. Because for those of us who have to say it, will probably have trouble doing it. The bully is the one who speaks with bravado and doesn't have the chutzpah and the angst to bring it. And that's based on my opinion, but also my experience as a high performance mental coach with teams of all different, both professional and amateur teams. Now, as I say that, there's another thing about teams and the champions on teams. It's their resiliency. And we've got some challenges here. As you know, there's a lot of football, college football, that's trying to play this weekend. Some that are not are the Big Ten. And in particular, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin, was supposed to play, I believe, Nebraska this weekend. And Wisconsin players got kind of stuck with COVID, and that's regretful, especially when some of those COVID players, in this case it's a Clemson quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who's, I mean, the kid is just a talent, and it's regretful. He could be out for as many as 2 games because of this. Now, I thought about that, and I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, what if he had the flu? Or mono? That's happened before. Mono is a virus that causes kids to, have to take a back seat for 10 days or so. And there's an incubation. There's a time frame. You got to let it run its course. Same thing with COVID. Any kind of illness like that, you're going to need to let it run its course. But COVID is different because of the contagious nature of it. So I asked myself, how did Trevor get this? And I'm sure Clemson and the teams that he played last week, if they played, are asking the same question. Who did he come in contact with? Was it other players? So on and so on. Those are challenges. Those are things we have to deal with. Now, this report and putting together today's show has another input source for me. I was talking to a friend of mine who I grew up with. He knows me really, really well. And he is not of the same opinion as I am. He doesn't wear a mask, and blatantly told me that. But he had COVID, went on a fishing trip up into northern Minnesota on the Canadian border. Had a great time, great pictures, but he got COVID. Survived. And that in itself was evidence enough for him to say, I survived. It's like the cold, it's like the flu, everybody can survive. And the numbers are inflated about the deaths and the consequences of COVID. I'm a scientist. I scientifically approach issues that need solution with the teams I work with and the elite athletic and executive performance I deal with. So I pointed out to my colleague and my friend the facts, the science that are not opinions. This is what happens with viruses. And this one is airborne and it's contagious, extremely contagious. If you don't believe the United States, take a look at Taiwan. When Taiwan saw this coming back in February, they shut things down. They did exactly what we are asking others to do here, and they have yet to report a case since March. That's real. That's fact. That's not somebody's opinion. So if we do the job, we could have similar results. Now, I say that with kind of a little bit of trepidation. Taiwan is 23 million people. That's like the state of Florida. They've got a good situation. So at least the state of Florida, if they would have practiced what Taiwan did, could have had the same results, right? And if we then went to the next state and the next state and the next state, there's a possibility we could have similar, if not equal, results. Here's what concerns me. Each governor needs to be emboldened, lifted up, encouraged. But instead, they compete with one another because leadership at the top, at the federal level, is not quite aggressive enough, poignant enough, leader-oriented enough to make it happen. Now, as I say that, I'm going to keep coming back to sports. Because here's how it happens. The Pac-12 this weekend, not yet. Big Ten postponed, teams that could not comply. Not a bad thing. It just didn't happen. They got sick. Kids got COVID on the Wisconsin team. Clemson's not playing. Well, the Clemson quarterback's not playing. I don't know what they're going to do. Mountain West, they started. There was a game last night. Our Rammies, Colorado State, against San Diego. SEC, kind of up and down. They're not doing it conference-wise, but some teams are playing, some teams aren't. Same thing with the ACC. Some teams are, some teams aren't. The list of other conferences and teams in those conferences across the country that are not playing at all, they've basically shelved the season and are waiting to see what happens after the first of the year, are a long list. There's a lot of organizational issues that have been addressed, and the organizations have decided to take steps to preserve the safety of their kids and ask them to focus on their academics while they wait for the opportunity to play in their sport. And that's a long list. And I say that because we've got some thinking we need to do about how we put kids in harm's way. So I asked the question, how long will this situation last? And if you come up with an answer, I don't know that you've got an answer locked in. LSU is going to play next week against Arkansas. I know that because I've been talking to some of the ADs down there, not about the game and whether it'll play or not, but about just what's their approach to the pandemic and getting prepared for games. Because every day could be a different story that would cause them to adjust the number of fans in the stands, who gets to be on the sidelines to cover the game, photographers, reporters, technicians, heck, just staff, as it relates to food and beverage, or the people in the locker rooms taking care of that. Well, the LSU-Arkansas game next week is in Arkansas, at Fayetteville. And Kyle Parkinson is one of the ADs that handles media. Had a email exchange with Kyle, and 2 photographers. That's it. That's what they allow on the field. Now, the fans that are in the stands, they've got a pretty big arena. So there's going to be more than a small number of fans, but it's not going to be a packed house. It might look a little bit more like it's a gathering of a very large high school that's smattered all around the stadium. I'm sure some of you have some experiences of being in a stadium where it wasn't quite filled to capacity and what that looks like. Imagine that in large stadiums like Arkansas, Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia, and continue on down the list. They're not going to have the same visual experience. The environment will be different. What do coaches do with that? Well, first of all, they're going to still wear their masks, but they need to adjust and adapt. Their method of educating and training their players about what does that environment look like. It's going to look more like a practice, like spring ball, where there's nobody in the stands, but you're still practicing in full pads as though it's the worst and baddest competitor, or the worst and most competitive competitor across the ball from you, as you do in spring ball. But now it really is. It's LSU against Arkansas. But you're not going to have the fans in the stands to support you. So in talking to Kyle, I asked about what are some other things that are influencing your ability to deliver a really good product. You know, quite honestly, college football, it's entertainment. Just like a lot of major sports events, they're entertainment. Well, guess what? They got a hurricane that's running through there, or weather conditions that are running through there. What does that have to do with the situation? Could we get a respite on this a little bit? If it's not a pandemic, it's a pandemic with a hurricane, and then we've got, oh yeah, next Tuesday is election day. So what more could we add onto the pile to distract us and keep us wondering about the next footstep I'm going to take on my journey towards success? So my question is, how long will this last? Mask up. We have evidence that supports it's a good thing. Even if you've had COVID, like my friend, you could be asymptomatic. You could share it, another version, with somebody else. It's not a big deal. Well, I mentioned it briefly, and here it is. We knew in the bubble, I showed you this slide a few weeks ago when the NBA Finals are going on, and LeBron and his teammates, Mr. Davis and others, are there encouraging people to vote. If you watched last night's football game with the Falcons and the Panthers, you saw on the field they imprinted a graphic there about voting in 2020. I think it goes without saying, with all the messaging that's out there, that people want us to vote. I voted. I have my sticker. I voted. I'm proud of it. And I'm encouraging you to do the same. But as I say that, as I mentioned a minute ago about the event my wife experienced at the grocery store, I'm wondering how much of that's going to happen from now until next Tuesday. I'm concerned. I'm concerned for states where we've already had displays of that. And will that spill into the sporting arenas, the fields, where you just want to play? I don't need this. I don't need people telling me what to do and how to vote. I just want to vote. And certainly not at the football game. I don't need you sitting out where tailgating happens with a banner, stomping your feet, telling me I should be voting for a certain party because you're going to pop me in the head if I don't. Intimidation has no place. But messaging like this is good. The other piece of this that bothers me is that when we're preparing for great competitive events, Election Day is a competitive event. The two candidates, they're out there. They're moving it. They're moving the needle, or trying to. Or trying to defend the needle that moved the wrong way, right, and bring it back towards you. It's regretful that in addition to intimidation techniques, we also have flexing one's muscles in a way that's not appropriate to keep the playing field level. Like fewer drop boxes, removing mailboxes, making it difficult for people to actually place their vote, or changing the rules in the middle of the game, submitting your cases to the Supreme Court, and then putting the Supreme Court in a position where in Pennsylvania they upheld, in Wisconsin they did not. So what are the rules? Well, guess what? It's state by state. But why are we arguing that now? Let the states, as was said to them earlier on the pandemic, manage state issues. The Supreme Court was very clear on this particular point. Voting rules, poll rules, the guidelines during the election period are up to the states. Let them do their job as it's put out there right now. If we want to change it later and you make it uniform from state to state on certain mechanical issues about how we get our votes to the poll to be counted, that's what's important. These are critical times. Creating doubt and confusion is beneficial to any competitor. Look, I'll be right there telling teammates and the coaches of teams to, through your performance, understand what I just said, through your performance, you will create doubt and confusion with your competitors. Through your performance, that means playing the game, executing your plays. Not trash talk, not changing the level of the field in the middle of the game, not changing the rules in the middle of the game as a way to create the confusion and the doubt. That's why these games are so precious. That's why I love watching baseball. That's why I love playing the game of basketball. It was something that you could count on and rely on. It's hard to find what I can rely on. Well, family. I can rely on family. And I'm sure you've got some things that you can rely on as well. So with that being said, voting, I think I made it very clear, 3 times actually, vote, 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 is, let's take a look at the truth be told. If you're looking for the truth, from whoever tells it to you, and you think it's the truth, but you're not, you get a little nag in the back of your head, ask some questions. Don't leave it uncovered. Ask some questions. And when you ask the questions and you don't get the answer you want, or you don't get an answer that seems to land as a support to what was said to you, so it doesn't really enhance your confidence in that it was truthful, check it out. Look it. We have no excuses anymore. We have so many ways to get a hold of information that's free to us. We don't have to pay anything for it. That's what they call the internet. But you've got to have the integrity and the desire to go do that. Too many of us are just, well, he's the president. It's got to be the truth. He said it. Well, it's got to be my boss. It's my boss. I love my paycheck. He's right. Got to be, it's my wife. Of course, it's the truth. Seriously, though, you are in control of much of what you hear and see. If it comes to you and you doubt it, and it's confusing to you, you're the one that's in control of it. Remove the confusion by putting your own research into it, qualifying the source of the information. In doing that, I hope by doing that, whether it's a political campaign, something at work, family issues, these are not suggestions you can't use in other aspects of your life. But to just sit back and take everything you hear and everything you see as absolute truth, especially when you've got so many millions of people that may be communicating another set of information that questions, in fact, maybe just blatantly refuting what you just heard, that requires a question. That requires you, if you're truly committed to the truth, go find out on your own. Don't rely on anybody else, because we have no excuses, truth be told. Now, that being said, the last point I want to make the last point on this particular slide, but I'll make another point about today, is stay active. Give your brain a chance to get trained, and that goes back to my comment about ask questions, seek out the truth on your own through your own research, and to do that, you've got to be out there. Don't let this pandemic and this health situation cause you to stay set in one place. We can get out, we can walk. Now, I understand there's going to be people that says, well, but yeah, it's cold up here in New York, or it's really, really hot outside in Florida. I understand that, but there are certain times and varied methods that you can utilize if you're creative. Being creative is essential. It is essential to getting things done in a way that keeps you productive. And the first step in that being productive is be active so that your mind can be trained. So train your brain through your activity. Here's a quick example of that. If you're taking a walk as one of your ways to get out there, be active, right? Simple thing, just take a walk. Take note of the details on your walk. How many leaves can you see on the branch of a tree you're passing by? Real simple. It's like when you're driving with your mom and dad when you were a kid in the car, and somebody says, I see something blue. You go through those mental games, right? This is something you could do on your own to train your brain, enhance the awareness, get more specific in knowing the world around you, so that when you're with people that say things to you that they believe is true, but the way they say it or some of the things you hear doesn't quite match up with what your experience is, you have the awareness to question it. You have the awareness to take a moment and figure it out. Okay, as I said before, I've got some other points I want to make to you about what's going on out there in the world at large, but in particular the sports world. As you know, we have a new World Series champion. And this kind of goes in line with what we've been talking about. Mr. Lawrence, many of you might know him from his big red beard and his flowing red hair. And he has this black mark on his left shoulder from the pine tar in his bat that gives him a kind of another moniker of recognition. But he was pulled in the seventh inning, was not able to finish the game because at the end of, sometime in the sixth inning, they were notified that he had tested positive for COVID. And that was regretful. So according to the rules, he was pulled out and sequestered. I'll hesitate to say quarantine because I don't know exactly the condition with which he was sequestered in the clubhouse. And I hesitate to say that he was quarantined because when the game was ended and the Dodgers won the World Series, he was out on the field. Now, granted, he had a mask on, but he took the mask off. Let me put it to you this way. He sat in the front, could get the group picture taken, had the trophy next to him, pulled the mask down under his chin, and in the movement, if you watch that film, rather hesitant. I think he wanted to keep the mask on. And then his next move was, you could tell somebody said something to him, and he took the mask completely off and got the picture. Now, those in the country, around the world perhaps, that saw that questioned why he was even out there and questioned the league, Major League Baseball, to ask them why they let him do that. As much as I have pointed a finger at the science and continually harped on the science, I don't have a problem with that. Here's why. The stadium was a neutral site. It was a bubble, as much as they could make it a bubble. We don't know, I don't know at this time, I've not been told, nor have I looked at, what was the source of his infection. Where or who did he get infected from? I don't know that it matters. What matters is his teammates were there. His general manager was there. They wanted him there. That's their choice. It's their family. Like you have a family. I've got friends that recently found out their spouse got COVID. They made choices. Everybody got tested. Everybody's got to stay away from him. He's in one part of the house. They're in another part of the house. They're doing what they have to do. And so will the Dodgers. And so will their teammates. I'm going to close today by giving you a story. Well, I hope it's going to be a true life story about what the future looks like for Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball wants to add more teams to their list. They want to add 2 more teams to make it a list of 32. I don't know that that'll happen or when it'll happen if it does. But there is a movement going on in Tennessee to bring a team to Nashville. I've been part of those discussions. I'm excited for them. I'm excited for being part of that whole process. But one of the key things I want to bring up is that good people hang around good things. And Tony La Russa is the one I want to mention. White Sox, Cardinals. Tony La Russa is a baseball legend, and yet he is still very active at 76 years old. I am looking forward to Tony La Russa being involved in the search for a team to enter into Memphis. Now, apparently, not apparently, this is fact, there is a name for the team. There is a group called the Music City Baseball that's already organized and putting together the right people to run that organization. Now, Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball Players Association still has to vote on it in November of 2021, but many things are moving quickly, and Tony La Russa is one of those things that's moving right along with it. And he is a positive influence on the sport of baseball because he has the moxie to tell it like it is and to stay focused on what's the right thing to do in the moments those things need to be done. Hey, have a great day today. Pleasure staying with you. This is 360 Performance every Friday, 11 o'clock. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman, known as The Coach, streaming on KUHS. Now, let's take a listen to Michael Jackson and Working Day and Night.